There's a unique type of anxiety only known to a very specific subculture of gamers. It's the anxiety of a Tuesday night in rainy Stoke, 89th minute, nursing a 1-0 lead. When your star centre back pulls a hamstring, you pause the game, you stare at a spreadsheet of fictional numbers, you make a substitution, and then you pray. For over 2 decades, Sports Interactive Football Manager has not just simulated this experience, it's entirely monopolised it. It is less a video game and more of a second job. Real life clubs use its database, real life managers have been hired off the back of it, and as of Football Manager 2024, the series boasted a staggering 19 million players. But heavy in recent years, especially during the rocky transition to the Unity engine, which saw the historic cancellation of FM25 before the eventual release of FM26, the community's grumblings have grown louder. Complaints of stagnation clues it in recent years, especially during the rocky transition to the Unity engine, which saw the historic cancellation of FM25 before the eventual release of FM26, the community's grumblings have grown louder. Complaints of stagnation, clunky user interfaces, and broken match engine promises have led to a recurring desperate question on forums and on social media: does Sports Interactive need a competitor? Today we're going to look at what happens when a single studio owns an entire game. We'll look at the ghost of competitors past and the heavyweights who tried to dethrone the king and failed. And finally, we'll break down exactly why creating a rival to Football Manager isn't just hard, it actually might just be impossible. To understand if Football Manager needs a competitor, we first have to understand the nature of monopolies in gaming. When we look at the wider sports gaming landscape, competition breeds innovation. In the early 2000s, FIFA and Pro Evolution Soccer, also known as PES, traded blows year after year. PES pushed the gameplay, FIFA pushed the presentation. They forced each other to be better. When PES stumbled, FIFA, now EA Sports FC, took the monopoly. And many may argue the gameplay stagnated as a result, pivoting heavily towards a lucrative Ultimate Team model. Sports Interactive, backed by Sega, finds itself in a similar yet distinct position. They don't have Pro Evo, they don't even have a distant second place. They are their only game in town. Don't get me wrong, there are some pros of the monopoly. They do have a laser focus. Sports Interactive doesn't have time to waste and doesn't have to waste resources fighting in a marketing war. They can reinvest straight into the product. They do have community unification. The entire modding, tactic testing and content creation community is centralized on one platform. The database, with no competitors dividing the scouting network, Sports Interactive has built the most comprehensive football database on planet Earth. But then you have the cons of the monopoly. The technical debt. Without fear of fit players jumping ship, core legacy issues like match engine optimization, repetitive press conferences, and robotic player interactions can be just ignored for years. Features drip thread and overhaul to set pieces might be the marquee feature of a $40 release, something that might just be a patch in another game. Turbulence of the mid-2020s proved this. When SI attempted to bring their massive engine leap to Unity, the friction was immense. Deadlines were missed, FM25 was completely scrapped, pushing to a next-gen leap to FM26. If a viable competitor existed, would SI have been afforded that level of patience by the market? Absolutely not. Players would have migrated, but because there was nowhere else to go, fans simply sighed, waited, and kept playing FM24. But it wasn't always a one-horse race. There used to be challenges. If we jump in the time machine and head back to the late 90s and 2000s, the managerial dugout was a crowded place. Let's look at the three most distinct attempts to challenge the throne. Championship Manager. Before Football Manager, there was Championship Manager. Created by the Collier brothers, it was published by IDOS, but in 2003, the developer and the publisher had a bitter split. IDOS kept the name Championship Manager, Sports Interactive kept the code, the database and the soul of the game, renaming it Football Manager. IDOS handed the Championship Manager to Beautiful Game Studios. They had the brand recognition, but they had to build a brand new game from scratch. It was a disaster. Championship Manager 5 was bug-ridden, slow and lacked the additive magic of the original. Despite putting Roy Keane on the cover and throwing marketing money at it, the player base instantly recognised the imposter. Sports Interactive Football Manager 2005 crushed it. Championship Manager limped on for a few more years before quietly dying. The lesson we all learned: brand names mean absolutely nothing to this community. The data of the engines are absolutely everything. What if you didn't compete on PC? What if you went to the living room, enter Codemasters with LMA Manager? Running from 1999 2000 to 2007, LMA Manager was built for consoles. It was understood that sitting on a sofa with a controller is fundamentally different and a different experience to leaning over a keyboard. It had an intuitive trio-based menu system, allowed you to build your own stadium piece by piece. Crucially, it had a realised 3D match engine years before Football Manager implemented one, complete with Gary Lineker and Alan Hansen giving post-match analysis. It was, at the end of the day, incredibly fun, but it was very shallow. As the console generation shifted to the PS3 and the Xbox 360, the cost of development skyrocketed. The casual management market shrank. Players who wanted depth went to FM. Players who wanted casual football just played FIFA Career Mode. LMA vanished. If anyone had the money to kill Football Manager, it was EA. EA released Total Club Manager, which later became FIFA Manager, spearheaded by genre veteran Gerhard Kohler. EA brought a bazooka to a knife fight. The exclusive official licenses, the crest, the kit, the 3D engine ported directly from the mainline FIFA games. But EA misunderstood the assignment. They thought players wanted a lifestyle simulator. In FIFA Manager, you could use your managerial salary to buy sports cars, invest in real estate, get married, and even have children. They would even generate into the youth academy. It sounds fun, and it really was, but it distracted from the football. The tactical depth was a puddle deep compared to SI's Ocean. You couldn't really complain. It sounds fun, and it really was, but it distracted from the football. The tactical depth was puddle deep compared to SI's Ocean. You couldn't create complex pressing traps, and you couldn't manipulate the data. In November 2013, EA finally admitted defeat. Gerald Kohler released a painfully open, honest letter announcing the death of his franchise. Football Manager genre. In November 2013, EA finally admitted defeat. Gerald Kohler released a painfully honest, open letter announcing the death of the franchise. The Football Manager genre at this level of sophistication is highly specialised and primarily played in two countries, in which one game has practically dominated the market. We evaluated all factors and led us to the decision to blow the final whistle. EA surrendered, the monolith was untouchable. Since EA's retreat in 2013, the landscape has been mostly barren, the nature just a vacuum. In the mobile space, games like Top 11, featuring Jose Mourinho pointing you from the App Store, make absolute millions, but they aren't competitors. They are monetized engines dressed up as football games, relying on microtransactions, energy timers, and pay-to-win mechanics. They are Football Manager what Candy Crush is to Elden Ring. However, a genuine modern attempt did emerge on PC, We Are Football. Spearheaded by none other than Gerard Kohler, the man EA let go, and his team at Winning Street Games, We Are Football, and its 2024 sequel, tried a different approach. They didn't try to beat FM at the spreadsheet game, instead, they aimed for pacing. You could finish a season at We Are Football in an evening. You had a sleek UI and integrated women's football beautifully before SI even managed to, and it brings back some of the light-hearted stadium building elements of the early 2000s. To bypass the lack of licenses and the massive labour of creating thousands of player faces, they even implemented AI-generated portraits for the generic players. It is a remarkably competent, fun game. Remains a cult classic, but not a king killer. Why? Because it lacks the one thing that makes Football Manager an addiction: real-world authenticity. Which brings us to the core of this video. Why hasn't a major AAA studio, a Sony, a Microsoft, or a Take-Two tried to make the ultimate Football Manager killer? Billionaire gave you unlimited funds tomorrow to build a rival to Football Manager, you would still fail. Here are the 3 unsurmountable walls you would hit. And number 1 is the database. Sports Interactive's database is not just a bunch of numbers in a hard drive. It's a living, breathing human network. Sports Interactive employs a network over 1,000 scouts worldwide. They have people watching 3rd division games in Argentina, youth tournaments in Norway, and semi-pro matches in English non-league. The database has been refined for over 3 decades. It is so accurate that real-world clubs use their network, pay Sports Interactive to identify transfer targets, and you just cannot code this. You cannot buy it off the shelf. To compete with FM, you would need to hire 1,000 people and wait 20 years for their data to become reliable. Wall number 2 is the match engine. Simulating a football match is a nightmare of physics and logics. You have 22 independent AI entities on a pitch. Each player has dozens of attributes: vision, passing, aggression, stamina. The engine has to calculate in a fraction of a second Have a player with 16 vision and 12 passing, decides to react or pressing forward with 18 aggression and 14 pace, while accounting for the weather, the pitch condition, the tactical instructions that you yell from the touchline. Build an engine that visually represents this without players looking like they're skating on ice or making logic-defined errors is technically grueling. While SI themselves struggle with it, constantly tweaking the balance between realistic simulation and visual fidelity, a new studio would spend 5 years just getting the ball to bounce correctly. Number 3 is habit and the UI expectation. This is a psychological wall. Football Manager players are conditioned. They spent thousands of hours learning when the buttons are, how the inbox works, and how to read the specific layout of a player profile. If you design a competitor, you have a dilemma. If you make your interface look exactly like FM, you look like a cheap knockoff. If you design a brand new innovative interface, FM players will hate it because they don't want to learn a new visual language. They want their spreadsheet exactly how they like it. And then the exorbitant cost of FIFA Pro licensing, league image rights, the club badges. The barrier to entry isn't just high, it's walled off, surrounded by a moat, and guarded by snipers. So, does Sports Interactive need a competitor? From a consumer standpoint, the answer is always yes. Competition that forces prices down and quality up. A legitimate rival has forced Sports Interactive to modernise the UI faster, fix legacy bugs, and perhaps transition their game engine with a bit more urgency and a lot less community heartbreak. But from a practical standpoint, we have to accept reality. Football Manager is a unicorn. It is the product of perfect timing. Started in the early 90s before licensing became a billionaire's playground, and decades of compounding data. We will likely never see a true AAA competitor to Football Manager, at least in our lifetimes. The financial risk is too high, and the genre is way too niche. Perhaps the answer isn't a game that tries to beat Football Manager at its own game. The future of competition that lies in this space is alternatives like We Are Football, games that offer a completely different flavour of management, faster, more casual, and entirely historical. Until then, the Sports Interactive sits alone on the throne. They will frustrate us, they will delay features, they will break the match into patches, but come Tuesday night, when our striker goes down injured in the 89th minute, we'll still be there, staring at the spreadsheet, making the sub, because there is just simply nowhere else. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what feature would the competitor have to include to make you install Football Manager forever. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.